Hi there, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, your host of Next Gen, where we're focusing on the next generation in the sport of purebred dogs. And I'm excited today to be joined by Peter Kubacz. He and his family are Ramblin' Red Irish Setters based in New Jersey. How are you, Peter?
I'm doing well. How are you, Michael?
I cannot complain. We're going to talk about how you got started in the sport of dogs and your thoughts on your breeds and how to engage the next generation in the sport. Let's start with your family and how they got started before we get to you.
Well, interestingly enough, my parents actually met at field trials before they ever were doing conformation things. That's how they met each other. They weren't even together at the time. Like, they just randomly were noticing that they were going to the same field trials all the time.
Seeing the same people.
They were dating different people, I think, also at the same time. And it was never, I don't think obviously there must have been something because they decided to do what they did. But in my father's brilliance, and people who know him will laugh at this little story, he finally told her one day, hey, look, we're going to the same shows. We live fairly close to each other. He worked a nighttime job. And he was like, you can use my truck and we can go to these shows together, but you have to drive. So he could sleep.
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
And that was the introduction of them. And then they just came together.
I love that.
When I was speaking earlier, my mother actually met Marjorie Martorella walking her Irish setter in the park. And Margie, being Margie, just came up to her out of the blue, didn't know her, and said, that's a nice looking dog. Have you done anything? Like, dude, where did you get it?
Yeah.
And she's like, you should show it. It's a nice looking dog. So that's how my mother got involved in showing dogs with my grandparents. And they were actually the show people. My father was more of the field trial guy.
Okay.
And she started doing the field trials, and here we are.
So you basically grew up. You didn't have a choice, right?
Yes, I tell people I was going to dog shows before I was even born. While I was still in the womb, I was attending a dog show.
And you did junior showmanship and
I did all that. But the thing was, my parents never tried to push me towards showing dogs. I always went to dog shows. It was the family thing. They really showed a lot of Irish setters at that time. They were just showing Irish setters like crazy. Didn't really show a lot of other different things, but always we had a van full of Irish setters going to the dog shows. And I'd get to the dog show and I'd jump out of the van and I'd go either run to whatever playground was there or wherever place I could go fish or go find my friends and we'd go climb a tree. Like, I didn't do any dog things other than just interact with them. Like, I was not involved. They never tried to push it at me. And then over time, like probably when I was getting to the junior showmanship age, like 9, 10, I was like, well, maybe I'll show one. Like, I didn't show them when I was a kid. I was not the little 7-year-old boy in the ring showing a dog. I was the boy in muddy shorts fishing in whatever river or body of water I could find, not paying attention to the dog show at all.
Bye, mom and dad. See you at the end of the day.
Basically, there'd be times when we would be leaving from a show, and they're all loaded up, the van's ready, and they pull up to the playground and honk the horn. I just gotta, okay, bye, new friends I just made. Gotta move to the next site.
Wow.
And that was like how my childhood was, and they never forced it. And then when I started to show interest, then they would get me more involved. Then when I probably started showing my first dog, who was from a dog that my father, they leased this dog, and he won the national on him, and he got like a Group 2 at Westminster with him.
Wow.
And they used him as one of their stud, like they leased him so they could use him as a stud for one of their bitches. It's almost the reverse of what you normally do. Normally you lease a bitch, and then you breed it to your dog. We leased this dog, showed it, shouldn't say we, my father, and then I loved that dog. Like, he was like my companion when I was young and growing up. And so then he only had like 2 puppies, and I took one of them as my first like Irish setter that I groomed, and I trained him, and I showed him, and I did all those things, and he was like my first one.
From like day one, brand new puppy.
Day one, like, this was my puppy, this was my dog, he was my responsibility. We had plenty of dogs in the kennel that, you know, I had formed attachments with because they were always around, and I would just go into the yards and play with them. Like, I didn't, I just didn't care. I didn't care about what they won or what they were doing. I just went in. We had a paddock with 10 Irish setters in it, and I just went in there and ran around with them.
What could be better?
There was even one time we had a bitch that I just liked her, you know, for her, and then my parents ended up selling her to this other couple, and they showed her, and they, you know, they did all the things with her. They finished her, and they actually used her as one of their foundation bitches with going forward on some of their things. But I remember I came into the kennel one day and I went, "Where's Katie?" Now, mind you, I'm 8. Like, "Where's Katie?" Like, "What do you mean, where's Katie?" I was like, "Well, she's not here anymore. Where'd she go?" They're like, "Oh, we sold her to the McKays."
Oh no!
Sold her?
Oh no!
I had no idea that they're
crushed.
Like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I loved her."
Oh!
I was like, "What? You should." And I think that was probably the spark of what then wanted me to get more involved with them, because I didn't show her, I didn't do anything with her except hang out with her while she was running around.
But that attachment started.
Yeah, and so then, like, those people, like, they've been lifelong friends of us anyway, and they knew us all before, and like, I showed her a couple of times in juniors and match shows and things like that. They definitely let me be involved with her once I started to become more interested. But to me, it was just like, "But where'd Katie go? She's not here anymore?"
Right. Oh, I love that. And then, so once you were in juniors, did you start working for handlers while you were already at the shows, or was it still just mainly your parents?
It was mostly my parents. I didn't really work for a lot of handlers, as far as the way you would think you would work for handlers. Because again, I was still in like my kid mode at that time. So like, I still like just hung out with my friends, and, you know, I'd do junior showmanship and I'd show the Irish setters. And then once that was done, then we'd go find that playground or go find that, that place to fish in. And I was out of there. So like, I didn't like get pushed in that direction. And again, my parents never tried to. They just liked the fact that I enjoyed it. It was our family bonding thing.
Right.
You
guys are traveling together, having a passion shared together.
I mean, they took me out of, I missed so much school. And I could only imagine how much school I would have missed if dog shows were the way they were now.
With like 5-day
weekends when I was a kid. Maybe there was like a few 4-day weekends. There were circuits and you moved every day, but it wasn't like the mass dog show that we put on now, where they're all in the same place and you just go to that one spot. Like, we would, if it was a 3-day weekend, was a big weekend. You know, so, you know, you're moving every day. Maybe you're at one place for 2 days and then you move to the next place for Sunday. But it was never set up the way it's set up now, with clubs sharing grounds. There are sometimes we'd move 30 minutes to the next dog show site here.
Wow.
You know, you do one dog show in this county of New Jersey, and then like all the ones that we have that are Memorial Day weekend, playing fields and all those shows, they were all in their little individual areas. They were literally there, and we moved from field to field doing it. It wasn't how it is now, where you're just going to one place for 4 or 5 days.
Do you think if it was like that, that you would have gotten burnt out, like as a younger kid getting into the sport?
I don't think so, because though I enjoyed it and I was successful at it, I also wasn't doing all of that work. I wasn't helping set up things. I said I'd literally get out of the, like, as I got like into my older teens, like I'd help set up X pens and blow dogs out more and be more involved in that way. But when I was younger and just getting into it, it wasn't my job to put the dogs out in the morning. Your
parents let you be a kid and have fun.
They let me enjoy my childhood, and I think probably because I was not at school as much. Mm-hmm. So like all of my high school friends and stuff, like I didn't have that sort of social relationship when I was in school, because I was always away. So I'm in school and I see my friends and, oh, hey, hi, we're in class, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then they're picking me up on Thursday after school, and we're going to a dog show. And I'm missing Friday's class, and I'm not around on the weekend. So any of the extracurricular activities, they're not happening.
Just social life and things that happen on weekends already.
As I got older and like got into high school and older years, I still I missed whatever your crazy high school phase could be. I was in the crazy dog show phase. So no, that's really interesting. It's definitely an atypical lifestyle, and there are variations. It's not something where people just stay at home and do it for an hour. You're on the road and you're traveling, so it does have its. And I think because I was in it as a young kid and wasn't forced to be like the little worker bee, that made me appreciate it more.
Because it wasn't forced on you. It was allowed for you to like it yourself.
I wasn't given that. I was given responsibility. Like as I got older and I was, 10, 11, 12, 13, and now I'm grooming my own dog. Then my mother's worst mistake I ever made. My mother was like, well, now you can do the feet and the clipper work on a tape. Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
Now thinking on that
30 dogs later.
Exactly.
No, I love that though. It made it more organic, and it allowed you to really kind of find your own way in that. Was at what point did you decide that this was something you wanted to do full time, like as an adult?
I mean, I probably still like when I was 18, 19, coming out of high school, I went to college. Mm-hmm. I showed dogs while I was in college still. Yeah. I didn't go to as many of the, the big 5-day weekends. Not that those probably were as much as they were, but I didn't do those as much. Mm-hmm. But I've definitely arranged my schedule. So I never had classes on Fridays. Just about. It. And as you get into your older years of going to college, you can make your schedules even better because you'll get more priority. So then I had classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I jam all in. So I'm taking I'm doing 3 classes in a row from noon to 4. Right. But I'm done. And then I can, if I'm going somewhere, then I have basically a 4-day weekend or so to let it happen.
Be on the road and at dog shows. I love that.
But my parents were still showing dogs, and I would leave school and go meet them by that point. It wasn't I still was going there. And then if it had worked out that we could show up at the same time, we would. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But, I still obviously was wanting to do it, and I enjoyed it. And it paid for a lot of things in college. For me, I mean, it allowed me to pay my rent, to pay my car, to pay my insurance. When I had friends that were trying to worry about spending $60, and I could just, I didn't exactly. I didn't have that. That wasn't my issue. Right. So it grew me up real quick. Yeah. Seeing the people that I was in school with, and it's their first time doing things by themselves and creating a schedule and having to follow it. And I was like, if I want to go do these things, I have to do these things first. You know, that was like going to school was a job in my mind.
Yeah.
This was my
It's just that's the job for Monday through Wednesday, and then this is your other job.
Right, and then I get to go have fun with my other friends. So
yeah. And then now I'm sure you have to do that a lot because you have the boarding kennel as well, right? So you're kind of doing two businesses still.
Yeah, well, the boarding kennel is, you know, I've taken on a few new employees. Unfortunately, during these times, it's not as great. So I'm staying more home at the boarding kennel.
Yeah.
Than having to grind it out and go out every weekend. You know, definitely the income has been lost, but for sometimes it would cost me more to go to a dog show than it would to stay home and run the kennel than to pay the people to do it for me. So I mean, I definitely had, you know, I had a pretty good system in line, and we live on the property. My parents live on the property. So there's a lot of people here that can, you know, just do a simple check-in. How are the dogs? Come in the morning, take care of them.
Right.
Deal with the clientele that are coming in and out throughout the day. And then, you know, they could go home, but then my parents would still be at home to at least,
so somebody has eyes and ears and knows what's going on.
See what's going on. And so it was never like there was nobody on the property, regardless of if we were gone. And then as, you know, probably in these past few years, my parents retiring, I definitely made it a point where I wanted them to have the least amount of responsibility with checking in on the dogs. Like they don't need to worry about coming down the kennel. They obviously do. And, you know, and our own dogs are in the kennel as well. Yeah. But I wanted it where they didn't have to worry about coming down at 8, 9 o'clock to do final checks and see how everybody is and close up. Like I luckily found a good person who's close and been very great. And we actually have one of our employees with us like for as long as I've known this place. You know, she still comes in, she bathes dogs, she can, you know, run the phones and stuff, and she enjoys it. Like she likes doing it. So you know, I've been lucky in that aspect to find some good help to help us all do the things we want to do. And especially now my parents traveling and being retired and being on the road where I'm definitely not here. Right. Like more so last year than this year, but yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And good help is worth its weight in gold, right?
It certainly is.
And you guys have also been doing some breeding this year, right?
We were able to, we had 2 attempted, 1 success.
Got it.
And now we have a little litter of, I believe they're 3 weeks old now.
Okay.
Of 6 Irish setter puppies.
Oh, love that. Why don't we talk a little bit about just your impression of the breed, having grown up in it and seeing it progress over time. First, what would you say the hallmarks and priorities of a good Irish setter are? And what are things that need to be prioritized at this point in your breed?
That's a big question. And I could have a large answer. You know, the standard people will go to is, you know, they're the most beautiful of all breeds, which it's a part of the line in the standard, but it's not interpreted the way that it is said. The lines of the Irish setter are so balanced that artists deem them the most beautiful of all breeds. But to me, I can look at an Irish setter that is standing there and is beautiful. Like you look at it and you go, wow, look at that. Look at all that hair. Look at all that glitz and glamour.
Right.
And then it takes 3 steps and you're like, whoa, look at that. So like when those parts don't mesh, I don't find that beautiful. I can appreciate your elegance and your nicely chiseled headpiece, but if it stops there, I don't find that. I would put more. I don't want to say the word mediocre. I'd say less stylish looking dogs that maybe weren't done up in such a fancy way,
like a caricature.
Than I would like a dog that like has all of the parts that I would want and that I would want to incorporate into a breeding program. I can take any straight angled dog and fancy trim it and make it rack up real pretty and run it around real fast so you don't see that it's not extending off its hock and it's not actually reaching, it's just lifting its front leg because it has no return of upper arm and shoulder.
Right.
But that's my job versus what I look at. Like a lot of dogs that I show and finish are not dogs that I would be particularly, impressed with, but
right.
It's part of,
or using in your breeding program.
Or definitely not using in my breeding program. But,
right.
Personality, I mean, they need to be steady to wing and shot. They should not be spooky. Things should not overwhelm them. They should be able to walk into a situation and just go with it. They should be loving dogs that get along with each other. There shouldn't be fighting with each other. That's like, I have 6 of them that run around together. That's their little group with some pointers as well mixed in. So, I don't want, I definitely don't like bad attitudes. I don't like spooky, shy dogs. That's an immediate, that tells me there's something, if you can't grow past it, there's something genetically there. It's not just, this particular one. No, there's something there. Like if you get past 2 years old and you're still, afraid that the judge is coming up to you. Right. To me, that's a problem somewhere within that lineage. Pardon me, my cat's going to probably jump on my lap.
He wants to join in.
So, I want good fronts, nice big fronts, big rears to match. I find when that happens, though, that you're going to get, I like mine a little longer and lower because with all of that front and chest to match, if you're shorter backed, it's not going to look as good. They're not going to be able to use all of that because they don't have the length in them to cover the ground you want them to cover.
Sure.
If they were just little short-backed, mincy things that can just run really, really fast and, go around a little 10 by 10 square ring. That looks really good in those 2 seconds you're looking at it versus let it go run in a field and mine will run all day and yours will be tired.
That's such a great point. Because again, it is a working dog and it's bred to be out working all day. And that's why we're looking at this stuff, right?
And it's funny that that's how it is. But if you were to go to an actual field trial and see the working Irish setters, they're the exact ones that I described. They look so completely different. Like a champion field Irish setter looks so completely different from the ones that we show. Their heads are changed. They look more like ones from like the 20s and 30s.
Really?
Like some of like the dogs that like Tommy Glassford showed.
Yeah.
I look at those pictures, like people talk about these old great dogs, and I look at those pictures and I go, those don't look like the ones we have now. Like they totally changed. And like you look at them and they look like more of a field version dog. They're a little shorter coupled. They have good forechest and they have angles, but to look at some of those dogs, even all of the setters, the ones Janie showed, and they look so different than the ones now. I'd say like once we started getting into like maybe the late 80s and 90s, you really started seeing a big change in, like some of the, marquee that George showed, and they started to change.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say for the worst. It was just that was the style that was coming through like that. And it wasn't that those dogs probably couldn't do those jobs, but they look so different. If you were to take that dog to a field trial and ask it and then compare it to the ones that were the field trial, their heads and tails different. It's
looks like a different breed almost.
Yes.
I love that.
Like where like you could have a Brittany and you could take a Brittany and show it at a dog show and it can be super successful as a Brittany. And then you could go take it and run it in a field trial and it'll be super successful as a Brittany. There would be no difference. It would perform and look the same. They want the red setters with the tails up, like a foxhound tail. Like they want to see the tail while it's running in a field. Versus like if you took a show Irish setter and trained it to do all those jobs, you can, if it has the drive to do it, it will do it. But it won't be scored sometimes as well because it's not as flashy as the other dogs that have those. Like it's never going to beat a pointer. For the most part, it's probably if you're like at an all breed field trial and you're like going for your, dual championship, you're gonna have a hard time beating those pointer breeds than you would if you just like went to an Irish setter field trial. You could be very successful there, but when you got to go against other breeds, and the judges their judge bias can be very skewed because they're so used to looking at that high-tailed one. Look how fancy, look how their idea of fancy is reversed to our idea of fancy. And it, totally skews how much you could, it's really rare for Irish setter. There's like maybe 20 some champions. So it's like super rare to be like a field trial champion and a AKC champion. That's a very, very hard thing to accomplish. And the people that do it, it's considered a high remark reward.
Got it. That's pretty interesting because like you said, not every breed is like that, but there are several breeds where there are huge differences between stock dogs or working dogs and the show and conformation dogs.
Yeah,
Labradors and.
Yeah, I would say the setters for sure are very, very different looking. Even like English and Gordons, to see them, what they would want as like a good field performer versus what we would want as a good conformation performer. So different. And I finished a lot of dogs that have field blood in them. Like you look at them and like if you don't know what you're looking at, you're just going to be like, oh, what a boring dog. But if you know what you're looking at, you'll be like, oh, this dog has like more of that old school field mentality in it, and still good on its legs, still good enough head, still, good frontage, strong muscle, bone, rear, but it just doesn't have the hair. It doesn't have all that extra
elegance and
pizzazz and exact elegance to it. It looks like a red setter.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Why don't we also talk about who some of, other than your parents, obviously, who some of your most impactful mentors and dogs have been?
That's really easy. It would be George Alston for sure in my younger days. Like I did his handling classes.
Yeah.
Probably when I was like, might not have even been a teenager, maybe like 12, 13, 14, I would go to his handling classes. I remember going to his handling classes, but not participating in them because my father was going to his handling class. And I was just sitting in the back playing on my Game Boy. Again, no, not a care in the world to the dog show thing going on. Just so I have to go with you, so here I go. And that's what I'm doing, or in the hotel room watching something on pay-per-view. And then once I started getting more interested, I totally went to his handling classes. I never won them. I think I went second twice I went to 2 of them, maybe 3. But just all the information that he gives you is incredible. And he really teaches it like a seminar. It was and to actually then listen to him and listen to the things he was saying, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the things that I still do to this day are probably because of him.
Yeah.
And then as I got a little bit older, our Andrew Doyle was another person who, and if there were to say anybody that I worked for, it was probably him the most, just at the time. And I wouldn't even say I worked for him. Maybe I'd go help groom a dog, or help him show something as I was like maybe in my mid-teens now, and even probably into my 20s. And he's unfortunately passed away, but he was definitely, and he showed a lot of Irish setters, and he was really great friends with my family. And he definitely was like probably a big influence on me as I got older and seeing dogs and hearing him, and a lot of grooming things I took away from him, because he did more of what we do now with the sculpting and the really refined trimming of them. He was doing that, and my mother wasn't. And I was always impressed by that, and I always wanted to do it. And it was also probably just being a young kid and your parents and going against the grain. So I
doing it your own way.
I started to want to trim my dogs that way. And then, like, Andrew would always be like, "Don't tell your mom I told you how to do that." I was like, "Where do you think she got it from?" Yeah. She knows that's what you do. I mean, that's not how she likes to groom them, but
right.
That's what I want to do.
Right.
I would go to his grooming seminars when he would have them, just to learn those things. I'd come over and sit in his setup with them and just talk to him and, watch his dogs. And then probably towards my later years, when I was like in college and even after college, and was like, now I'm out of school and I'm not doing a lot of dog show. Like, I'm not doing school, so I can go to dog shows all the time now. Mm-hmm. Kelly Fitzgerald was a big influence on me too, I'd say. Just from like watching her and her setup, and
sure,
she was super. Not that she's not successful, but like at that time, she was winning Westminster, she's winning the AKC
over and over,
just winning all the things. And I was lucky enough that like she was kind to me and like I treated her. I feel like I could say about her like I would like my best friends is I could just walk into your setup and you're not going to question that I'm there. I could just be there. I could just show up.
Right.
I'm not interfering with whatever's going on, or clearly if something's hectic, I'm not going to, hey, let's have a chat. But yeah, I could totally just walk into the setup and start talking about what's ever going on in life and dogs, whatever. Her and Chris, very, very good to me in my younger years as I was getting into dogs and staying with them and setting up with them, and just seeing that different aspect of multiple breeds, multiple things going on, and, having to manage all that time and all these different breeds and different clients. Her and Chris definitely big parts of my later years in dogs, for sure.
Yeah. All great dog people. What would you say some of the most memorable experiences you've had in dogs, in the ring or out of the ring?
Well, probably winning the national best of breed at 16 years old. That was probably that's a pretty spectacular, tremendous win, I'd have to say. I'd probably say I really enjoy our Irish Setter National, and a lot of my younger years, whether in or out of the ring, they were always positive. Like, it was such a good community of people, and it was
great culture.
Yeah, you see people that you might not see them until the next national, but when you see them, it's like, oh, hey, here we all are again at the national. And a big hangout. Like, our nationals last a week. Wow. With all the things that they have going on. It's between agility, obedience, and sweepstakes. Right, like, and at that time when I was a kid, I mean, our nationals were 400, 500, 600 dog nationals, so they were super big with a lot of people. Wow. And even a lot of the kids that were in juniors, like, we were a pretty good group of people. Like, we definitely all hung out with each other. There was no animosity to where, your mom's this or your dad's that, and you won and I didn't. Right. None of that really cared to us. We did it all. We all showed. We all had our successes one way or another, and then at the end, we're back in the swimming pool or over in someone's room being children. Like, so I find those to be very positive moments in dogs for me.
I love that. Let's wrap up with what would be your advice to people who are younger or newer getting started in the sport, or for people who are currently in the sport for what they can do to help those kind of people along?
Well, for the people who want to help, don't hesitate to help them. And I really don't like, I know we all complain about spectators, but I really don't like to, because we're doing this for them too. Like, yes, this is our job, and yeah, you've got a lot of things going on. Like shows like a Philadelphia Kennel Club at Westminster, probably the only 2 bench shows we have now. Yeah, it's a big hassle, and it's a big pain for us. But we shouldn't just think of it like that, and we should not treat these people who are coming with their family, and maybe they're not going to show a dog, but maybe they want a show dog or a purebred dog, no less. And maybe they won't do conformation, but maybe they'll do obedience and agility, you know. And like, I feel like a lot of people shun them off, and like, you know, you set X pens up around your tables, which just to me puts a negative vibe. Like, hey, we understand you have a lot going on, but you can still be polite. And so, oh, please no, please don't touch the dog right now. They have to go in the ring. You know, you can come back later and meet them if you want, but like right now, this is really their time. Instead of just like being so harsh and gruff and like, this is my area, don't come into it. Like, it should be dog shows should be a welcoming thing, because we are all still a community within ourselves, and even more sad than ever, where we can't even really do that. We can't go to a dog show and hang out the way we were and experience it the way that we could. So like, I think I hope people appreciate what we used to have to what we have now. Right. As far as younger people coming into the sport, you know, it's always a question they're asking, like, how can we get young people in? How can we get young people in? I don't necessarily know there's an answer for that, because if you're not selling your dogs to those families that would have those kids, then you're not going to get that young person. That young person is already here, and we just need to nurture them to want to continue one way or another. But to say like you're just going to pull a kid, there's the rare occasion of just pulling a kid off the street who's already 12, 13, 14 years old and is doing their school things with their school friends. And now you're going to tell them, we're going to go to a dog show for the weekend. And you're going to do this. Like, that's such a shock to them. And if they don't have the natural tendency, there is some natural skill to it. And if you don't have it, to force it on them just makes them, like I said, like my parents never made me do it. Mm-hmm. And then I just took to it and I liked it. And then I wanted to go to George Austin's handling class. I wanted to go to Andrew Doyle's grooming seminar. Right. It wasn't put upon me. So I don't think it's a thing where you can just force them in. Nurture the ones that we have, the young kids that are already here, and just let them enjoy it. Don't burn them out on it. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and yeah, they'll have a lot of work to do when they get older, but don't kill them on it. And then you see like some of the kids now, like the ones that will be the new handlers are already doing, like, they take the initiative. Like when I have kids work for me and I'll do things and they're like, you're doing my job. Okay, fine. I'll leave you alone. Go. I know you're going to do a good job. I'm not helping. I'm not doing these things because I don't think you're going to do it right. Yeah. I'm helping. But if you want me to leave my setup so you can do all the things, have at it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great take just on leadership in general, you know, having that perspective of what people want and what their strengths are and not trying to make them something that they're not. And when they want to push for that more responsibility in doing things, giving them opportunities and good dogs too, to be able to do that with, versus somebody who's younger and who's just, you know, they're trying to have fun, also not taking it personally and saying that they're not respecting the sport or putting in the work, you know, because they're kids.
Right. And I feel like you see a lot of, I call them like soccer mom kids in junior showmanship, like where those are the kids that like they're being pushed, and they clearly are talented. Like they wouldn't be at the level they're at without any skill or talent, but they're being forced to do it, and they're not enjoying it. I feel like I grew up in one of the best eras of junior showmanship.
Yeah.
I grew up with Angie Lloyd and Carissa and Jesse and Janice, and and Katie, and we all showed against each other. We all come from different places, but we still all hung out with each other at the end of the day. It wasn't, we all wanted to win, but we never felt, bitterness towards each other. And we all were clearly good because we all were in the ribbons every time,
Right. But you guys had an independent community between you guys, not a cutthroat dance mom.
Yeah, like we grew up in it, that we grew up with each other. I didn't have to go to the dog show and go, oh no, Carissa's here with her dog. And, oh, I gotta beat her today. I was like, Carissa's here. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to try and beat her. Like that was just it. And they beat me a lot when I was, they were years older than me. So I was like the open junior, while they're like the older open juniors, and then I'm the young open senior, and they're the older open seniors. Yeah. And that just made me want to have to do it better too, to beat them. Pushed you. A part of sports to, try and beat your better competition. If I'm not beating the kids that are good, then how good am I? I don't want them all to leave, which they all did because they all got older than me. But then I got to be like them to the younger people. I was, bow tie boy is here. I wore bow ties and showed Irish. So I was the bow tie.
You found your niche. I love that. Well, bow tie boy, I really appreciate your time and sharing your insight into your life growing up in the sport of dogs. I think it's just a really helpful perspective to see, those things that worked for you and brought you along to where you are today.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.